Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Next Chapter, a podcast featuring alumni from the College of Fine Arts and Communication here at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon. I'm the host of the podcast. I'm also the interim dean for the college. In each episode, we feature an alumnus from one of our programs in the college. Today, I'm talking with Linsey Lundeen Jackson, who graduated from WIU with a degree in art in 2014. Welcome to the show, Linsey.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'd like to add that your specialty was metalsmithing, which is a fun word to just say. So I like to say, and not only that, you were also the department scholar and the college scholar.
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow. That's quite an achievement. So we are very fortunate to have somebody with all those credentials on the show. So let's begin, as I always like to start with, where are you? What's going on in your life?
So currently, my husband and I live in a small town outside of Kansas City called Linsey, Kansas. It's a nice little itty bitty town. And we work in Overland Park at a jewelry store called House of Diamonds and loving life. It's great.
That is awesome. So we're going to talk about how you got to be in Kansas City area, but we're going to work backwards. And I always like to start with growing up, and you're from the Western Illinois region, and more specifically for those that are familiar in the Quad City kind of area, you're from a town called Aledo, which I'm very familiar with, and anybody that's in this area probably is. And but it's a small town, right? And so let's talk what kind of influences, what was it like growing up in a small town, and how do you think that impacted you?
I actually loved growing up in a small town. It's nice because you kind of know everyone. So it's kind of like a family being in a town and everyone has your back versus a big city. You don't know anyone or you don't know everyone, and everywhere you look is kind of not familiar versus in a small town, you kind of recognize everyone. So you always have a feeling of comfort and closeness and this and that. And it's nice. It's comforting. That's why I'm back in a small town, because we want to get to know the people here. And I like this town atmosphere. It's really comforting and it's nice. And it's good.
What kind of things did you like to do when you're younger that you think that, oh, no, looking back, maybe that was something that helped direct my creativity or interest in art? Or
growing up, my mom always was having me color and draw and do really anything artistic. My mom was very hands-on doing coloring and stuff and this and that. She was a teacher. And my dad is very hands-on. He loves woodworking, and they both like to work in the garden and stuff. And they were just both very, very active with their hands and just doing stuff, building things. And so I guess it's kind of just in the genetics. But I did that. I did golf growing up, some softball, some sports and different things and this and that. And I was just kind of always active and up and doing things. I did gymnastics for a long time. So just kind of all over the place, but well-rounded. But I did a lot of art. I was in different art competitions growing up in the area, just like little things here and there throughout the school. I took a lot of art classes in high school because that's just what I loved. I loved working with mediums, working with my hands and creating something out of nothing.
That's interesting. And, I'm half afraid to say this, that so many young people, because of technology and everything, every young person now has a phone or has a computer game or something to do. Do you think that, obviously you must be glad that you had that chance to grow your creativity side and things like that. Do you think that kids today maybe have less opportunity?
Either that or less motivation, because they're so sucked into the technology. They always want to be on their iPad, their phone. I can 100% see that. I've seen kids around us and even kids still my age that they just don't do the stuff they used to because they're sucked into technology and they don't get back into the stuff that they used to really enjoy. And it's kind of sad, but times change and there's so many digital things you can do now that are creative. They kind of balance it out and change it in a different way. It's just maybe a different form of creativity. I don't know, but the hands-on stuff, that's my bread and butter. That's where I live and I love, because I can see it transform before my eyes versus like clicks of a buttons in a program someone created versus actually doing something with my hands.
So when you went to Mercer County High School,
Mhm.
and while you were there, did you get an opportunity to kind of find that you were, obviously you must have had some skills or something that said to yourself, this may be something I want to do?
Yeah. I like I said, every chance I got, I took an art class. I had a bunch of wonderful art instructors throughout the school that really inspired me and pushed me to do better, gave me different types of projects and stuff like that. And they always kind of kept me moving forward, making me think. It was really rewarding.
So you decided, we were so fortunate in order to get you to come to WIU. So let's talk a little bit about your just early impressions when you were here. Did you stay in a dorm, and what kind of things how did you get involved in those kind of early memories of WIU?
So I was in dorm my whole 3.5 years I was there. And I took summer classes, so I was actually able to graduate a semester early, which is really nice. Highly suggest if you can do it, to put in the extra dedication, because it saves you money in the long run. But I lived in the dorm the whole time. The first year and a half, I had a roommate, and then halfway through my sophomore year, my roommate actually graduated. So then I had one of those double rooms to myself, which is really nice to have that space, which you don't get very often. But then my last end of the time, I ended up getting single because I knew I was going to be in and out of the studio, and I kind of wanted my own personal space in case I brought some stuff back with me. And it's just kind of one of those things that I was able to afford and get a single room. And so I stuck with it. And the last 3 semesters I was there, I was in the Corbin Hall, which was just newly renovated. So that was a nice bonus on top of it.
Yeah, no doubt. So how did you start to get involved over in with the art department?
So the first couple semesters, you just have your basic classes. I knew I wanted to be an art major, and I actually started out at WIU being a double major between art and math, because I'm also, most people aren't both love math, love art. Usually it's one or the other. And I love math. My first semester, I took calculus 2 and I took cal 3 my second semester there, and I absolutely loved it and it was great, but I just didn't know where to go with the math side. And so I ended up transitioning that I got a double minor in business and economics instead. But I always knew I wanted to do art. I wanted to do something creative because that's where my heart is. I wanted to work with my hands. And so you start off, you take your basic classes, your drawing, your design, all of those, the 3-dimensional classes, some of those things. And I took a printmaking class just for fun with, it was lithography with Bill Howard. And it was a really fun class. And I took a couple semesters of it and I loved it. And I thought that's where I was going to go because I really had a knack for it. And it was a lot of fun. It was just such a different process. And it was kind of down to the bare bones of printmaking, because you draw on this big, heavy stone with these grease pens and stuff, and you run through a process in this big, heavy mill, and you just squish the paper into it, and it pulls it out and pulls the ink off of it. And it was just so different from anything I had ever experienced before. And so it just captured my eye, and it was a really fun process.
Wow. There's so much to unpack there, Linsey. The fact that you were, and successful in that, because there are so many creative people that run into that in just the logical part of math, have that problem. But obviously you must have had such a, and part of my just wonderment is also to say, at some point early on, did you ever consider being a teacher? Because you said your mom was a teacher. Mm-hmm. And did you ever consider that?
I thought about it for a while. And it's one of those things that I've kind of gone back and forth. And actually now I've kind of wonder, maybe later in life I might teach jewelry or something like that, like in a local class or something. You never know. You see where life takes you. But right now I like to be immersed in the job and in the making of things and this and that. And it might be something that pops up later. I thought about it while I was there, but I wanted to focus more on what I could do and see where my path led me versus kind of teaching others. And it was a path that I did consider. I had not ended up going that direction.
Okay. So,
and I didn't even know I was going to end up in metals. I thought I was going to go into printmaking.
So how did that happen? How did you switch? Obviously you say you like it, you're having success with it. Mm-hmm. And then how did you find metalsmithing?
So when you're in the art department program, when you're an art major, you are required, if you're a 2-dimensional, so like anything paper-based, painting, printmaking, drawing, anything like that. If you're two-dimensional base, you're required to take at least three-dimensional classes, whether it be metalsmithing, ceramics, sculpture, things like that. You have to have at least two of those to make you a well-rounded individual in your major. So when I was doing printmaking, I also took a painting class, which teaches you a ton of depth, oil painting with colors and how they mix, and it just makes you see the whole world differently, which I will add. So if you ever get a chance to take a painting class, highly recommend it, because you just see the world differently. Because when you look at a color, it's not just a color, you see the different tones and the different colors that make it up, and it's just crazy. So anyways, that was a little spin off there, but it's just, it was mind boggling. So because I had to take 2 3-dimensional classes, it was kind of up in the air just which one I wanted to take. And I had throwing Thursdays at the time, which were fun. So I figured I can always kind of get my hands dirty in that. And I had planned on taking it the following semester. So I'm like, I'll take metalsmithing. Kat Myers had just gotten back from her sabbatical. So she had some new information from where she went and took her class and taught and learned and stuff. So I was kind of interested in seeing that. And a friend of mine at the time, Amanda, had really, really recommended me to take metals because she took it the semester before. Kat had left and absolutely loved it. So I'm like, what the hey, I'll try it. And I took the class, and I actually struggled a lot in the beginning. It was hard for me. It was not something that was easy, but I was determined to get the hang of it and push myself. And by the end of the semester, I had fell in love and didn't turn back, and the rest is history.
Wow. So when you say you struggled, was it your standards, or if I asked Kat the same thing, would she say, well, Linsey was wonderful from day one, but it seems like you probably had very high standards for how well you were going to, succeed in a particular craft?
Well, I'm kind of like my parents. They're kind of like duck to waters when they take to things. And so I was kind of hoping that I would be the same thing with metals. But it is such a different medium. When you first start out learning to saw and file and sand and be patient with it, that's the biggest thing, is you have to be patient and let the metal do what it's going to do and understand how it works to get to the process of where you're trying to go. And I like to do stuff fast. I like to see the progress. Like with drawing, you can just make a couple strokes, or with painting, you make a couple strokes and it's fast progress and you can go back and forth and back and forth. Versus metal, you have to take your time and it's a process. And so kind of doing that, I had to learn patience, and I would try and go through stuff probably faster than I should have. But it was just learning to work with the material. But once that kind of finally clicked, it was fun. And then I could focus on the different things like the design aspects and the building aspects, and kind of figuring out what you can and can't do. Because you always, when you go into a project, you have these big ideas, you want to do all these cool, crazy things, but you don't know how to get there. So it's kind of frustrating. And so I probably picked some projects that were ahead of my abilities and were probably a little bit too difficult, which is probably part of my frustration. But it was worth it because I just wanted to learn more and do better. And I think that drive is what pushed me to it. And then once you learn the material, it was so much fun. And like I said, the rest is history. I'm still doing it today and I love it.
Well, it leads me to this question, Linsey, and part of this is just my general curiosity when I hear artists that come to campus and talk about their, during an exhibition. How does an individual, and I see this from students that ask the same thing, where do you think that creativity, where do you think the inspiration for the creation of something that seems to be out of thin air, where you take these objects and put them together and you make something, is that just, where does that come from? And do you think that it's just a God-given sort of gift?
Maybe. I think a lot of it depends a lot per individual, because a lot of it just depends on what you're inspired by, where you get inspiration from. If you look to other similar works or pieces for references, sometimes you just wake up and something's in your head, or you think about something for a long time and it just slowly builds over time and it's just in the back of your brain. Like I have a couple of pieces I've been thinking of building for a while that I've just been mulling over for a couple of years now, and just it slowly builds and things kind of click and fall into place. And I think it depends per person on how it works. Some people, they just boom, got it all the time, left and right, and they have like 5-10 sketchbooks and it's just a matter of getting to it and getting the time to do them. Versus some people, it takes like months to come up with one piece, and it's different per person.
So are you a person that likes to take on a lot of different things where you're working on lots of different projects at the same time, or do you
I'm
like
very much a multitasker.
Okay.
Yes.
So you don't like to just have only one thing in front of you. You want to know you can leave that and go to something else.
If I have one project that's really, really big, and like it's taking up a lot of time, like one of my final pieces I did before I graduated is I made this big sculptural necklace that went down the front and down the back, and it was a multi-part piece. So in the whole one structure, I guess you could call it, there was probably like 50 to 75 individual pieces that I was working on and cleaning up and piecing together and adjusting and this and that. That was all connected by chains. So, and then I had other projects I was working on. So when you get frustrated with one, you can kind of move to another. So it really kind of depended at the time what I was doing, because sometimes throughout the course of the program, you only have one thing you're working on, but you still have other art classes and like the drawing classes and this and that you have other projects you have to work on there. So it's kind of balancing just between things, but I've always been a multitasker. I like to have different things going on. I still do that today. Besides work, I'm actually starting stuff for our garden right now. So I'm doing that. I'm in all kinds of food and cooking stuff. So I have bunches of different things that kind of those going on. We have 3 cats and a dog, and it's just, there's all kinds of stuff going on all over the place, and it keeps me busy. It keeps me active. And I like that. I like being busy and with different projects and stuff, because then if I make just a little bit of progress somewhere, it's like, oh yay, I made that next step, and you just keep moving forward, and it's just going the next step. And you're going to fumble in some places and some things, whether it's at work or on a project or something. But if you have something else that you make progress on, it kind of is still an up, like a motivation for me, like, okay, I can still make progress, just go back to it. Versus I think if I only had one thing I was focusing on all the time and I just couldn't get past this one point, I get so frustrated that I've seen where some people just drop it, lose it, and don't go back to it.
Yeah.
So
A lot of uncompleted work probably out there in the world that's people give up on. Let's go back to WIU, because I want to talk a little bit about, you were involved in I'm sure you were involved in what the department was doing with Throwing Thursdays and different things. What kind of memories do you have of helping out with the activities with the community?
I was a part of Kappa Pi. So when we had all those, like we had fundraisers and bake sales and dances. We had the end of the semester sales for each of the departments. So like the printmaking had a section, the ceramics, the metalsmithing. I was a part of all of those. We just had department activities going on and different things. The Rocky on Parade, I was the first season of that. And I did one of the dogs that's down at the sports bar on the square. I have a dog that's there, and I just kind of did as much as I could throughout the department. I practically lived in the studio. You could ask any of them. I was there more often than my dorm room, just because that was home to me. Like the metalsmithing home, the whole department, it felt like home. That's where I wanted to be. I helped in the office when Stacy worked there, and I was her assistant. So I worked in the office for a while, and I just helped with paperwork and running errands and things and this and that. And so I was always there. So.
Wow, that's it. And, when we talk about a family atmosphere, I mean, that the fact that you were comfortable enough, I'm sure, because you're dealing with a lot of these other professors and even people that you felt were maybe mentors to you, and how strong the relationship is between students and professors. You want to talk a little bit about, for those that don't know, how that happens and how important it was to your development?
Well, I really think the art department and the whole like music, theater, like the fine arts college is a different department than the rest of the college in general, because I took a lot of statistics or economics classes, business classes, statistics, math classes, all those, and you kind of know your professors, you know their faces. When you have to go ask them questions, but I'm sure the fine arts college is the same. I didn't do a lot there. I was more in the art department, But like I actually knew the professors and I knew them like more on a personal level, and they were all like family, people I looked up to, mentors. And even the teachers that I never took a class with, I just knew in passing. I still felt like I knew them and I was close, and we would talk, and like whenever I'd run into them, we'd sit and talk. And I still do. I come back and I visit as much as I can, and I walk through the building and I say hi to everyone that I can. And it's a sense of family and camaraderie that I don't think most of the other departments or even the other colleges on campus have. And I'm sure there are some that we're just not a part of, but it felt different and much more than what I was ever expecting going to college. I just figured you go to class, you get close to some friends, you have your instructors, and it turned out so different than what I thought it would. That it's just, we actually were a family. We looked out for each other, and it was very refreshing, and it made going to school so much more of a, I know some people just don't like school, and I love school. I get that because my mom's a teacher. I think I was just doomed for that from the get-go. But it made me love it so much more, my whole college experience. And I wanted to be there and I wanted to do good, because everywhere I turned, people were motivating me and pushing me forward to do better for me.
In Linsey, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about your experiences, but it seems like from my perspective of watching some of the art students, they are so much more supportive of each other than competitive of each. It doesn't seem like they feel like they're competing against each other. They're hoping for success of the people that they're dealing with. Did you have that sense too?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's always a little bit of competition, because like when we have there's always a semester where you put up your work and stuff and this and then there is a first, second, honorable mention, things like that. There is a little bit of competition, but competition's healthy. But yeah, I think it's definitely more of a supportive work, because we would have critiques and criticisms, stuff like all of that all the time, where you go over people's work and you tell them what they did good, what they did bad, or what could have done better, more so. And you help each other constructively build and grow, because art's not easy. It's a struggle. And some people think art just happens, and it does to an extent, but there's a whole journey to get to the end piece that not everyone experiences unless you're in it and you understand. And so there's a lot of frustrations and there's a lot of late nights. Like I would be there as late as you can, because at some point they shut down the building, then you have to go. And so kind of just understanding that frustration and exhaustion to try and get stuff done is like a bond, which is really nice. And you're there and you're in it together, because you're in the studio working, versus you're sitting in your separate dorm rooms working on papers late at night. You don't really feel it the same like as you would in the other departments, where yeah, you're all tired because you had to work on the same super long essay, versus being in the studio together and working together. It's different. So
it's interesting, because for years I worked in video production, and whenever I'd work on a video, I always felt like I just become totally enthralled with it, to the point to where if I looked at an old video, I'd probably start working on it today, because I'm never done with a video. Do you ever feel like I'm done with something that you've been working on, or is it always this feeling that I could probably do a little bit more tweaking?
There's always something you could do to it. There is a point where you realize that if you do more to it, you could do more damage than good. So there is that completion point, that you call it done and you feel where it's right. And there's a couple of tweaks here and there you could make, but there's also a point where if you keep going, you could actually end up going backwards, and you kind of spiral the opposite way. Then you have to try and build it back up and go back and forth. And so it's a struggle that I don't think something's ever completely done. But there is a point where you reach where it's done for you and for what you're trying to accomplish, or to come across, or to tell the story, or whatever it is you're trying to do.
Okay, interesting.
And so whether that's dedicated by either a deadline or a level of finish, or whatever you're trying to do. I think there is a finishing point, but there's always something you could do.
Sure. So when you were finished here at WIU, you moved back home, and what's going to happen to you?
So after WIU, I moved back home for a couple of years, because I was fortunate enough that the same semester I was graduating, there was a lady up in the Quad Cities area that was selling her whole jeweler's bench, all her tools and stuff and this and that. And so I got really lucky that I walked into this wonderful opportunity where I bought a used jeweler's bench that was handmade and all these tools and stuff so I could work and still make the stuff I wanted to. And I had access to it actually in my parents' garage. And it was really nice because I was like, what am I going to do to try and keep like developing this and moving forward and this and that? And so I got a part-time job up in the Bettendorf, Davenport area at an interior design store, which was really different. And it's another different aspect to look at life because everyone's got to live in a house, and just it's more design based. And that's what my boss did, was he did interior design. And so that was really interesting to see that type of stuff. And it just kind of makes you think things differently. But it gave me some time to figure out what my next step was, if I wanted to try and start my own business, to take more classes, to go back to school specifically for jewelry. I kind of took some time off to figure out which path I wanted to take. But in the meantime, I did take some continuing ed classes with Kat Myers, and I went back whenever I could, and I would still work with her and learn from her, and kind of did some continuing education through WIU even after I graduated, because I was still close enough that I could.
Well, that's good. And, I like that part of your story, Linsey, because I think sometimes when people immediately graduate, they think that there's always a linear progression, where you move from here, you're going from A and you're going to go right directly to B, and there's no, pause in between. And you still took this opportunity for personal growth as you're deciding what your next step is. And at some point you decide, which I think is another big moment for you. You decide to go down to Texas and continue this personal growth.
Yeah. So what I did, besides the continuing education through WIU, I also did take a 2-week smithing class, which was in like forging and hammering and metal raising and different things like that in Tennessee, which was really fun. And it was at this little school that they just teach random classes, and the school's well-rounded. They do metalsmithing classes, fabrics, ceramics, glass, all kinds of crazy stuff. Painting, it just depends on the time of the year and what they have available. So I went down there for a metal class and just tried some different techniques I hadn't done before, which was nice. And so I really liked the idea of going back to school. I love school and I love to learn. And so I finally came to a point I decided I wanted to go back to school to focus in just jewelry. The metalsmithing program at WIU kind of gives you a taste for it. And I knew I wanted to go the jewelry direction, because a piece of jewelry is something that's very personal. It's something you wear on your body and on your person that people actually have with them, versus something on a wall, which you can appreciate. But if it's something that's with you every day and you wear it and you look at it constantly, or you constantly feel it, like that aspect really spoke to me. And so I knew I wanted to go back to school. And there's 2 schools I was looking at. There's one also in Tennessee in a different area that was near Franklin, which is outside of Nashville. And I liked it, but it was only like a 3 to 6 month program, which is actually where Kat did her sabbatical, which is how I found out about that one.
Oh, okay.
But then I went and I visited the one in Texas, which was a 2-year program. And it was a lot more in depth. It started you out back at your bare bones of what you learned pretty much in Metals 1 in the first semester. And then you go to casting, which is kind of what we did there. But it's over the span of 2 years, you kind of go through the knit and the grit, and it's focused on jewelry. So it's on a much smaller scale. They hold you to a higher quality because you're working so small and this and that. And so it's more of the production side of it, which I wasn't quite crazy about, but I figured you learn the basics, you learn the mechanics and the structure, and then you can apply it to kind of a more artistic side and do what you want to do. So that appealed to me. And so I packed up all my stuff and I moved 12 hours south to Texas.
That's a long distance. And
and it's very hot down there. When you're born in the Midwest, you're used to cold winters and like semi-hot summers, but not like hot like Texas. Holy cow.
Looking back on it now, you must think, well, good for me. I mean, it took some courage and some determination that obviously it was a great benefit to you.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, Paris, Texas, I had never heard about it. And when I found it and I was going to go to the school, which is the Texas Institute of Jewelry Technology, All of a sudden we were talking to people. I was talking to people saying, yeah, I'm going down to Paris to look at the school. I'm going to Paris to go to school. And all of a sudden, all these people know where Paris, Texas is or have been there. And so I have this weird little vortex that there's so many people that you never heard of. So it's kind of funny. It's northeast of the Dallas-Fort Worth by about 2 hours, and it's 10 minutes from the Oklahoma border. So I'm just like dipping your toe into Texas. You're not quite all the way in there, but it was really nice. I loved the school. When I went down and visited to look, the program looked awesome. The whole setup was super neat. Each semester was in a different classroom because the setting of what you're focused on changed. And so that was really neat. And then moving down there was the biggest leap because I didn't know anyone. I wasn't going to know anyone for like a decent amount of ways, but I really wanted to do it, and it was calling to me, and I wanted to learn. And so I took the leap and I went. If you had told me when I was at WIU that I was going to be moving to Texas in a handful of years, I'd have told you were nuts, but I did it, and it changed my life. And it was one of the best experiences and one of the best things I could have asked for.
So how did you get then from Texas after you received, is it 3 certifications?
Yes, I got 3 certifications while I was there.
And so then how does that lead to your job at the House of Diamonds?
So when I was in Texas, after your 3rd semester, you get your repair technician, and then your 4th semester, you focus in goldsmithing and fancy diamond setting and stuff like that, which gives you another certification, which I can't remember the title of, so that's my bad right now. But then also during one of the summers, I stayed to take classes, and I got a gemology certification. And so I was trying to make myself as well-rounded as possible while I was there to get as much knowledge. And actually, while I was down there this semester ahead of me is where I met my now husband. And so he was the semester ahead of me, and he had finished the program. And at the time, we were just friends when he was graduating and stuff. And he told me about this job he got up in Kansas City because I wanted a job that works on custom stuff. It's not a manufacturer. It's not a repair shop where you don't do stuff that's creative. It's the same thing every day, or you're just repairing stuff all the time. That's not what I want. I want a place where you build stuff from the ground up and it's custom. So it's different things you're working on all the time, this and that. And he came back from this job interview and he told me what he got. And I was so jealous. And I told him that. I'm like, I'm so jealous. You got the job I wanted. I'm so like, that's exactly what I want. It's for a small family. It's not in a big corporation where you're just a number or you don't mean anything to them and this and that. And it was so frustrating. And actually things progressed that while he was up here, we became more than friends and started dating. And so his boss came to him one day, like as a joke. He's like, hey, you know another bench jeweler? He's like, yeah, my girlfriend's actually finishing up school right now. And he goes, really? And so just kind of kept in mind. I came up and visited and chatted and this and that, and kind of got a foot in the door. And a lot of places, which really surprised me, would never hire a couple in a million years. And he took a chance on me, and they needed a jeweler. And when I graduated, there was a spot that was open, and I got a job up in Kansas City. So I followed my boyfriend at the time.
Wow.
Which is not the way that most people find a job, but you know what? It worked, and I loved it, and it was great.
Well, it does show you that life is like a series of dominoes that, tumble in a particular direction. And it's a great story. I think it's was really neat that happened. So, I want to talk a little bit about, again, the creation of jewelry is interesting because I thought about this personally. I mean, about how you do create things that people keep for and wear. Oh, I mean, there are things I wear every day. So I identify them, like I think about this ring or whatever it is, and they keep it for the rest of their life. You're making something that somebody keeps pretty much for years and years. Have you ever really thought about that?
I have some, and there's some pieces that come in that are generational, that are like their grandmothers or their great grandmothers that we work on and repair. We actually do a lot of pieces where people bring in multiple family heirlooms that are just to the point where they can't wear them anymore, or they wouldn't wear them because they're just not a fan of the design. Yeah. And so actually a lot of what we do is we deconstruct the pieces. We separate the stones from the metal. We take the stones out, and they scrap the metal, or we melt it down depending on what they want to do. Most of the time we scrap it, but then the stones we repurpose into something new that they want. So they still have like their great grandmothers or their grandmother's diamonds that they've had in their family for generations, and they combine them all and put them into one new piece that they can cherish and wear and stuff. And actually, my necklace right now is something like that, and so is my wedding ring. A lot of these stones were my grandmother's. Like the necklace, half of the white diamonds, or more than half, all of them except for 4, were my grandmother's on both of my sides. So it's something I can wear, and I have my grandmother's with me, like every day I wear. And same with my wedding ring. More than half of the white diamonds in my wedding ring were also my grandmother's. It came out of a bracelet of hers. And so I got to repurpose it. So every day I have them with me, and it's something I can look down, and it kind of gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling, you know?
Yeah.
So
that's just terrific. We didn't even rehearse that at all for the viewers out there, that was just a wonderful example of how you can take things like that and then create something that's just makes a special piece for somebody. Is there a story like that, other than your personal one you already told, that you've said to yourself, this is a great story of what I've done with somebody else's stuff that I'm really proud of?
Yeah, I mean, we have people come in. I mean, it's almost all the time. Like probably in the last week, we've done 3 or 4 projects, if not more, that I could even remember, that have taken like either someone's grandmother's stones and this and that, and they're putting into an engagement ring that they're then giving to their fiance that they want to propose to. And so they're giving some of their family's heritage, I guess you could say. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but like their belongings and something that they cherished and they had throughout their lifetime, and they're giving it to someone else they want to spend their life with. And it's something you get to be a part of, and you get to help create that and make that piece to like kind of start their life. And it's very gratifying, and it's something that I take a lot of pride in to be a part of, because it's a big deal. Or like we have people that their family members pass away all the time, and so we had one lady that brought in a buttload of jewelry and stuff and this and that no one in the family is going to make. And so she had us make like 4 pairs of earrings, 3 rings, and a necklace that each of the either the daughters or grandkids or whatever all got a piece of whoever died jewelry, and so they get to kind of spread it throughout the family, and then everyone has like a memorabilia piece.
That's a great idea. I hadn't really thought of that, how you could then take something and spread it out like that for other people. What about sort of the challenges that you encountered? What's the toughest part of your job so far?
Adjusting to the workload and the pace. When I first started, because fresh out of school, you're always a little bit slower on things, and you want to do your best, so you try and take your time. There's also like there's a time window you have to get stuff done, and so making sure you meet that window but don't sacrifice the quality of your work is a daily struggle we deal with even today, just because we're so busy, which super grateful for job security. But just that, and then also getting it to the level of detail that they expect, because they have a high standard of what they put out in their shop, because they've been there for 20 plus years, 25 years, something like that. And so they have a really good reputation in the area, and they have a level of standard that you bring in. And you have some stuff you see that come in from different stores that, because their standard's so high, you see it and you're like, why would someone ever build something this way? Like there's such a higher standard to do it. Like, how could you let that go out? It's not stable. It's not structural. The stone's going to fall out. And that happens. We have stuff that come in from other stores, either chain stores like what you see in the mall, like Hellsberg's or Kay's or Jared's or somewhere like that, or like even some of the little local places around here. Not to bash them, but people bring us stuff from there all the time that we have to either repair or fix to try and like fix the other people didn't do correctly, or more stable or secure. So, and that's kind of interesting and awe-inspiring, because you think when you're not in it, jewelry is jewelry and it's all the same. But once you're in it and you're submersed in it, it's not. And I'm sure that's the same thing. It's the same thing for like printmaking, for ceramics, for any type of job or standard, that unless you're in it, you don't see past it to know what's good and what's bad and what's built right and what's not. And especially on something as small to scale as a piece of jewelry, because we do magnification with microscopes all day long. I'm looking through a microscope to work on these itty bitty pieces and all these little bitty things. And so to see it at that level is different than what I would have thought of. Because if you had told me how something was built or constructed, or a piece of jewelry showed two pieces to me side by side 10 years ago, I'd have told you, yeah, it's the same or it's whatever. And now I could tell you probably 100 different things that are different with each of them.
And you mentioned that, I think, earlier in the talk about how you have become or learned to become more patient. And part of that must be the fact that you are looking through and working on something that is so precise and so at times can be, you tell me what have you learned about yourself, and how do you become more patient?
You have to, because with metal, you can add some back, but it's kind of a reverse sculptural process, because once you have something, it's there, but it's a lot easier to take the metal away versus put it back on and make it look right. And so you don't want to file it too much, because then you just thin it out. You don't want to sand it too much, because you thin it out. If you burr too much, then you're going to have to try and add it back in. And we work within millimeters, which are just itty bitty amounts. We work within millimeters of sizes to adjust for things like stones or finger sizes or how parts fit together. Like my wedding ring, for example, was like 7 different pieces that we fit together. And if one was just like a millimeter off, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's night and day for how it fits and falls together and pieces together. And that's something we work with all the time. So you have to be very delicate and gentle and methodical about what you're doing, because if you take too much away, then you have to try and build it back, and it's never going to look the same from what was originally there, or it's very hard to get it there. And so you have to have patience, and sometimes less is more. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned, is sometimes less is more when you're working on something. So you don't take it too far. And that's kind of the thing we talked about earlier, where how do you know when something's done? Well, you kind of have to get to a point that if you go further with it, you're going to have a harder time to fix it. Because I've done that, where you think you need to try and fix this thing a little bit further, and then all of a sudden you hit something else and it's too far. So then you have to go backwards to try and fix it, and then go forwards to touch that up. And it's a struggle that I face on a daily basis. And you learn what to do and what not to do, but it takes time and it takes patience to learn those skills.
And I'm sure you're adding to your experience over and over again about knowing where your limits are and how to do things. And so that's
on a daily basis. I mean, I learn stuff every day, every week. It's a constant learning thing. You will never know everything there is to know in this industry. It's not possible. There's so much to do, and there's so many different aspects. And especially with some of the things that people want to accomplish and trying to get past to them, the mechanics of what you feasibly can and feasibly cannot do, or you can do it, but it won't hold up over time. And if you want something that's going to last, you need to build it a certain way. That's in itself another challenge to try and complete, to get the customer happy, but still make something that's sound, that will actually last and not break or fall apart within a handful of years.
So do you still do anything outside of the job related artwork? I mean, do you work on things just for your individual, I just want to create something at home?
Not at home. We do have this is the boss's rules, and I understand, because he owns the business and this and that. If we do anything personal, we do it through the store, which works for us because we get some of the materials and stuff either at cost or at a better price, which helps. But also the skill or the equipment we have there and the technology we have there is better than what we have here at the house. But that way it's just kind of all there. And it's a security thing too, that they have security cameras, they have the big safe to put stuff in. They have like all the equipment and stuff that's a lot safer versus like having like a torch and stuff at home, which we do have the torches out in the garage. But I do still do personal stuff, and I'm getting ready to I want to do some stuff for some family members and things, but we do it at work after hours, so it's on our personal time. But like, we don't have a microscope here to be able to see the same quality, or a laser welder, or some of those like big, heavy, expensive pieces of equipment that we do it at the shop. And we still do stuff in our own time and kind of our own thing, because that's like my wedding ring. My husband made my wedding ring and I made his, which not a lot of people get to say. And so, but we did all that on our free time. But it was neat because we designed each other's rings. We worked together to design them, drew them all out on paper, showed the CAD designer what we wanted to do, worked with her to build the models and look at it 3-dimensionally and wax the stuff before we actually took it to metal. And we got to be a part of every single part of the process. And it was incredible to be able to make something like that.
Wow, that's really cool. And that's such a great story. Linsey, I appreciate your time today. And I always like to end with a question about what kind of recommendations do you have for a young person like yourself, back in the day, where you're kind of saying, hey, this is what you should try to explore and find your way, as an art student.
Push yourself outside of your comfort zone, try different things. Like I mentioned earlier, I thought I was going to be in printmaking because my whole life I'd done nothing but drawing, painting, everything 2-dimensional. And that was my bread and butter because that's what I had known. And so because of the way the department was structured, I was forced out of my comfort zone. I had to take a 3-dimensional class and it was challenging for me, but it ended up being a lot more gratifying to me and I fell in love with it. So if you think something sounds fun, don't be scared to try it. Be open to as many new experiences as possible and give it time, and it'll turn out and it'll make you well-rounded more in general, because you will just look at things differently and understand constructions on things differently and design aspects, the different elements. It makes you a better, well-rounded person.
Oh, some great advice there, Linsey. And I appreciate your time, because again, just for people that may not realize, you just got through a really, really busy period time. Valentine's Day, I'm sure, people are coming to you all the time saying, can I get this done by February 14th?
Yep, they need stuff rushed done either 1 to 2 hours. Yeah, we get that all the time.
So I know your schedule is very busy, and I'm glad that we had this opportunity to talk about the wonders of jewelry making, and not only that, your time at WIU. I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
And thanks to all of our viewers out there that are watching or listening. We will continue to have alumni from our college departments on the podcast. We appreciate your support for not only WIU, but all of our schools here at the university. So until the next episode, stay safe, take care, and God bless.